On this podcast, we talk about legendary people who have accomplished great things, hence why they are legends. And I focus on these stories and I pick the parts that are more positive and also highlight the parts of difficulties and obstacles that people have to overcome to get us to where we are today. I covered Alexander Graham Bell in my very first episode of the Legendary Podcast. Right now I'm doing my personal take, and just kind of talking to you guys and seeing where we're going to end up going with this channel. What do people gravitate towards? What is more enjoyable? So I hope, just got to get started. Honestly, just got to get started. A little nervous. Here we go. So AT&T is the first company that I kind of highlighted and focused on. And I do a little bit of tidbit about how when I do go into AT&T, I honestly do wonder, like, what does that mean? I'm an inquisitive person. I like to know information just for the sake of learning information. And my goal would be to draw other people who are interested in the same weird subjects or just subjects that other people don't find fascinating, but you love knowledge and you want to talk to a fellow nerd. That's kind of what I'm hoping to be. AT&T. I really am curious and often ponder about things, and the meaning of AT&T was one that I genuinely was interested in. And when I had the idea of this podcast, I thought, okay, we'll just begin with interesting people and this is where we're going. Later on, it just so happens that I was getting some Wi-Fi connector or my phone switched over. But also I came across the meaning of why we have AT&T called AT&T is because of Alexander Graham Bell and the partnership that he had with Hubbard and Sanders, and how the company was able to be built and morphed and changed into what we have today, which is AT&T. Knowledge, to me, I believe, is power, or in general, you probably heard the phrase knowledge is power. Learning about people and aspects of how things came to be is something that can serve use or be of use to you in almost any setting. So that's why I think it's great to be knowledgeable about subjects. So Bell having a dad for a professor and how that shaped him, I think our parenting is a major, obviously, it molds us and changes us in a major way. And Bell is luckily for him, he has a grandfather and a father who are professor types, and he grows up in that world and he's nurtured and he's brought up to be inquisitive and experiments, which, if you're growing up with that kind of environment where you're trying new things and you're encouraged to try new things, it makes sense that Bell would become an inventor. And also his competitive spirit in wanting to get it done or prove his dad wrong or make something awesome just to be like, yo, I did it. I think it's pretty good backing, a pretty cool thing of how that could have shaped him becoming who he was. Becoming a teacher for the deaf. Bell's mom is actually deaf, and a passion obviously would be invoked in him growing up with a mother who is deaf. And I think this little tidbit is important to me because women in these men's lives make a huge difference or impact them in a small way. As this podcast grows, I'm sure you will become to know and realize what the theme is as well in these little things that happen where mom or wife, in Bell's case, it's his mother and his wife that are impacting him and who propel him or into the direction that he ends up going in. But for him, the deaf education was very much something that was on his heart. Growing up with a mom who is deaf, he's naturally going to have sympathy towards people like that. So him getting started with deaf and helping people and getting better at speech, yes, his father was a teacher of speech, which is one aspect, and then having a mom who struggled and he wanted to improve conditions for people like that, who were deaf and couldn't hear, definitely made a big impact of who he became. So having a good mom or having an inspiration, being his mom to begin, is something I'd like to give credit to for women. Because back in the day, I do know that obviously women didn't have as many abilities to do things and have a business of their own or make anything. Yet, when we examine history and when we look deep into the stories, often a little bit I've done so far, I've noticed that there is usually a woman, one way or another, inspiring, making life in such a way that they have a great impact on their sons, husbands, or supporters, some kind of way, but their impact makes or breaks the inventions that we end up having today. I'm not certain. So, if Alexander Graham Bell did not have a deaf mom, would we still have telephones? Probably. Yet, would it be Alexander who did it? I'm not sure. I don't. Maybe someone else would have done it, but who's to say that that other person who was interested in electricity, Elisha Gray, for example, so who's to say that what propelled him into the invention world wasn't something like he wanted to get married or his sister was ill and he wanted to provide for his family or something? All I'm noticing right now is that women are a big source of inspiration, and I really want to highlight that and put a little bit of a light on top of the impact that women had in the past, even though their names were not posted on inventions and great feats that had been accomplished. So in 1871, Bell arrives in Boston, and he loves Boston. There's great things happening with education and science, and he called it the intellectual center of the states. And I mean, Massachusetts, Harvard, things like that. I mean, even today, the names still hold value. We're working on that. Not to get too political, but we're working on making Harvard great again. Hashtag make Harvard great again. LOL. I have a friend who, if he does watch this, he'd be like, yeah, I agree with you, Shalinda. Hashtag make Harvard great again. Make Harvard be based on merit again. I digress. Yeah, so being in Boston, Massachusetts offered him many opportunities where he met Sanders and Hubbard because he was teaching their children how to speak, because he specialized in deaf education. So I know we talked in the story, if you did have a chance to listen to it. If you didn't, I totally get it. We're all learning all at the same time. Gardner Hubbard is Mabel's father, and Mabel was a student of Bell, and she is deaf. Or rather, she was sick with some illness that caused her to be deaf. She wasn't born deaf. Right now, too many details. I'm not going into that, but of course, we'll have another opportunity to get into all the nitty-gritty in a different atmosphere. Going back to Boston, yeah, so he met Sanders. Again, he was teaching Sanders's son, and good thing for that one is that he was in a place where education was really emerging, and he was experimenting, and he was trying to make a better world for people who were deaf. And being in that environment, he met people who also had power and the ability to help him manage and facilitate his business. So I think, people always say, go to the city, you'll have competition and it will push you to be better. Of course, that would be right at a time where, especially for inventing things, being in that type of environment would make him work harder and become stronger and infuse a sense of blanking on the word, of course I am, Urgency, yes, infusing a sense of urgency in him to get something done and become someone.